Hi everyone, welcome to the Inner Game of Change podcast, where we focus on exploring the multi-layers of managing organizational change effectively. Our guests cover a diverse number of critical topics to enable change adoption, including communication, leadership, training, change practice, process design, change capability, and much more. My name is Ali Juma. In this podcast, I'm joined by Fabio Oliveira to discuss another lever for effective change, smart and intelligent process design. With extensive experience in process design and innovation, Fabio Oliveira is the Director of Innovation at Worksafe Victoria and is a great mind when it comes to how critical process design is to successful organizational change. Fabio, good to meet you here. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me, Ali.
Fabio, what I want to cover in this podcast is everything around process design, innovation, process improvement. I'm going to use them interchangeably, but perhaps you can educate me on those things. And I want to have an understanding how the design of process plays a major part in how we adopt a change. Talk to us in general, Fabio, when we talk about innovation or process improvement, what exactly are we talking about here?
I think it's a very interesting space that sometimes you have blurred lines between what innovation and continuous improvement and process improvement is. From my experience, what after working with process improvement, continuous improvement, and more recently innovation, I think there's some fundamentals that you have to follow for any of the initiatives that you're working, that you want to create change. And usually those fundamentals, they are not so straightforward. If you come from let's say an industrial age paradigm where you were basically treating change as a mechanical thing, as putting in a new machine in a factory, and you don't think too much about the people.
Yeah.
In the world that we're living now, I think the innovation, process improvement, and continuous improvement, it's about people. So I think this is the key similarity. And working with people is not something that happens very often.
From your experience, design thinking, where does the process design start? Does it start because we want to solve a problem, or we see an opportunity, or can you talk to us more about it?
Yeah, I think that the process improvement and process design it should be a byproduct of an opportunity that you're trying to explore. In my experience, in the past, the decision to go for process improvement is basically looking at a problem space and trying to find what's the best way that you can solve that problem. It could be by changing an internal process, but it could also be a new marketing channel or a new piece of communication. Usually, if you're looking at organizations that rely a lot of, for example, manufacturing organizations or even services organizations that rely a lot on people to get the work done, there's a lot of opportunity in the redesigning process. But it starts fundamentally with that challenge on, do you need to get better customer experience, or do you need to get more profits or more sales? That's the starting point. I think that every time that you start with, let's just redesign this process, you're probably going to end up having to rethink halfway through the project.
Yes, so process design should not really be in a vacuum, should be connected to an opportunity or a problem. And as you mentioned before, it's going to have to be a people-centered activity, right?
Yeah, 100%. The world that we're living now, you might think that not much has changed inside the organization, but everything has changed outside. And you have to recognize that this is a dynamic that the people that you're working with are exposed to outside, like you and me. We are both exposed to a different reality. And that means that people are not so used to being pushed around. They have their voice. They know they have their voice. And primarily what you want to do is to make sure that the future state that you're designing is desirable by the people that are going to be going through that process. The same way that you're doing that with an app or a new product. You want to make sure that the people that are going to be running the process also want to do that new process.
Yes, and it's a great point point that you're mentioning that, I completely agree. I think there's far higher expectations from employees or people now that any change that is rolled out by an organization is going to have to take their voice into consideration. Not only their voice, their capabilities, their culture, the system, because you can design a whole process, but then the system is not going to be able to actually, encompass that particular process. And also don't forget that there's another part of why we design a process. We design it so then our people can actually adopt it easily with all the support of the change management, training, communication, and all of those things, so that our people can serve our customers. Is that how that process works?
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned design thinking before, and there's 3 pillars when you go back to, let's say the theory on design thinking. The first one is empathy, which is putting yourself on the shoes of the people that you're designing for. So you can't design, let's use process design to explain how design thinking could work. So you can't design a process sitting back in the head office.
Yeah.
You got to go and, stand and feel the pain yourself. The second one is co-creation, which is not designing and pushing whatever design to the people that you're working with. You got to design with them. And I talk a lot about the everyday experts. Like, you might know the theory, but the everyday experts know the reality and what's happening. So you have to bring them along. And the third pillar is experimentation. You want to make sure that you start small and you expose that new process to reality as soon as possible, even if it's not going to work, but you want to learn as soon as possible. So if you adopt those 3 principles, you're putting people at the center.
Yes. Okay. The 3 elements. How does those principles marry with the expectations that nowadays we work in an agile environment? We need to have the minimal viable product and get it out there. So how do we marry the two? Because sometimes lots of co-creation takes time.
Yeah, I think that it's not seeing those 3 principles as separate things.
Okay.
For example, I was working in an organization before, and we were redesigning a process, which was fundamentally a highly operational process on filling shelves and like heavy operation. What we did is that we designed the process and put that into practice in one day. So if someone had an idea, we went back and designed how this could work. And we started implementing it in the first day that we designed. That means that we got the feedback straight away. The people that designed were there to see it. And of course, that didn't work. Of course, we had to change it.
Yeah.
But we got the MVP, in this case, the minimum viable process running and learning from it. And we were, of course, ready to stop if things were not working okay. Some other processes are more critical. And, if you're in a hospital, dealing with people's lives, you might not be able to put it into practice, but you can prototype it straight away.
Yep.
And learn from it.
Yes. Fabio, how does design thinking play a role in helping an organization adopt the change?
I think that it becomes when you have a people-centric approach to change, it means that the change is not coming from the top. The origination of maybe the knowing where the problem is and looking at the results might come from the top, a more strategic perspective. But when you design with people, there's a few things that you get as a benefit. The first one is when you roll that out to the rest of the business, people will know that it was designed by their peers. So that in itself is a big change. The second one is the language that this new project, process, product will have is a language that it resonates with people as well, because you're not creating those, bureaucratic kind of safe terms. People will call it what it is.
Yeah.
And then you can rely on the expertise from the people that design to actually implement it. And there's nothing better than someone from that specific part of the, let's say, manufacturing plant that implemented that process, or a process in a bank to come in and roll that out to their peers.
Yes. Does design thinking or process design, does it take in consideration how complex or easy the training will be?
I think you'll probably, during your design process, you're not going to be thinking about that too much. But what you're going to be doing is basically, as you design, as you co-create, as you prototype, you're capturing learnings that will then feed back into a more robust training plan. So bringing the change team, if you have the luxury earlier in the process, they're going to be exposed to that as well. Of course, there's a point in time that is too early because you're changing too quickly.
Yes.
But if the change team is there, they're going to see for themselves what people are struggling with during the pilot and make sure that they can bridge that gap.
And that's really fantastic to highlight this point. There's always a bit of a tension is that when do we bring the change professionals? And my sense of it, and from my experience, is that the earliest possible opportunity that the change practitioner will have a seat at the table before it's too late. And if we meet one of the elements that you already mentioned in design thinking, which is about the empathy, because the change practitioner will have a voice and will have some insight as well. And that insight can be about the culture, can be about the people, and can be about how developed the training program is to actually deliver that. And so we can design a very sophisticated process, but then the training will be far more complex. And if the training is going to be far more complex, there's high likelihood that the change will not be adopted fully.
Yeah, 100%. We at my current job, we developing some new products that are focused more on the outside clients. And in the squads that we're building those MVPs, we have change professionals embedded inside, which is amazing because they are seeing firsthand what technology is doing, what design is doing, but primarily what the customers, the clients are saying. And they can build change impact plans and all of that straight away.
Yeah, great. Where is the accountability for the design thinking team with the process designers? Where is the accountability in terms of the change? Does it continue till the end of the change adoption process, or does it stop at some stage and they move on to another process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think I have a strong opinion on this, that I think that if you, especially in the reality that most organizations have, they don't have like a lot of resources to do design and innovation. I think you have to bring the people that are going to own that product, that process as early as possible. Ideally, start designing with them already. Of course, then most of the work will be done by the design team, but you need to free up time from the design team when the product has been validated, let's say financially validated, technology, organizationally speaking, also have been validated. And primarily, there's a desirability for that new process from a client perspective. Yeah. Once you validated those three things, I think it's time for the design team, innovation team to move on to other things.
Yes. Okay. The reason why I ask this question is mainly because I really would like to see the design team stay along the journey and be connected to it, because they can help solve problems. Because sometimes the prototypes are not going to give us all the insight and the flow-on effect that we need. And that's why I think it will be really great for the process designers to stay in touch with the rollout. In fact, they should show a keen interest in how the rollout will eventuate, how the change will be managed. It's like a chef. They don't only make the meal, but they would like the type of plate that the meal will be served on. They would like the type of table, and so that piece, it's a connected journey rather than I'm just making the meal and I'm going to leave it to the rest of the team to actually deliver it.
Yeah, we have a very interesting framework that we use currently at work. So I'm part of an innovation team. So we have, let's say, innovation is in charge of that original design. So turning something from 0 to 1. So that idea, like we come into a space where we only have a problem. We create, do a lot of research, develop some ideas, prototype those ideas. That's 90% innovation responsibility with an input from that future product owner participating, making sure that the person is involved. We test that prototype with a small number of clients, real clients, but not in a real world. And that the reason for this is that our industry is highly regulated. Once we confirm desirability and that we're not causing any harm with the prototype, we move to a pilot stage. Innovation still leads that pilot stage.
Yes.
And that's a small cohort that are going to experience that product as it is, but it's still heavily controlled. Once we move and you graduate from that pilot to a bigger pilot, that's when innovation changes its role from, let's say, leading to supporting. So, of course, we're going to be there supporting, and there's a lot of iterations that are going to happen. But suddenly from 90% involvement, we drop to, let's say, 30%.
Yes.
And then once you launch, it'll be like minimum involvement because the product is ready to go.
Would you always recommend that? By the way, some people call it pilots, some people call it trials. What do we call it? What's the best way to call things?
I think it depends on what the organization is used to. I think there's some clear distinctions between what a prototype is. That is, the risk is really high. The pilot is already something, let's say a pilot for me is an MVP. It's a minimum viable product that can be released out in the wild and can be used by your clients.
Yes, yeah.
Customers.
Yeah. And also, I actually hate the word trial because it gives the sense that if it doesn't work, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
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 And therefore, lots of people actually show no interest at all, or the awareness will not be there for that. This is great. Thank you. During COVID-19 and during uncertain times, and we have a temporary mindset. In time of crisis, we usually go a short period of time. How does process design work during those times?
Yeah, I think that there is one thing that was, there's so many bad things about COVID, but one good thing is that I think organizations were more inclined to adopt change quickly. And of course, that most of those changes, hopefully you're never going to have to go back to them because COVID will never be there. But I think that what happens with process design as a discipline is that we have all learned that we can do things differently and we can all rally behind change when we have to. It's just a sense of urgency that is not going to be there. And I think that for process designers, the risk moving forward after COVID is the change fatigue and that idea of, a burning platform that, we all know when we talk about change management, how, there's a lot of artificial burning platforms around before COVID. Like, how can you create an artificial burning platform after COVID? Like, you're going to have to rely on really interesting strategies to rally people behind what you're doing post-COVID.
Yes. And I think I really do believe that it's going to be hard for organizations over the next 12 to 24 months to talk about anything transformational because the majority of the workforce, they're really exhausted and tired. We've just come out, we're actually still going through it, through uncertain times, and that takes a lot of energy out of us. So I think organizations would need to think right now of process improvement and incremental improvement rather than a transformational program.
I agree 100%. And it's, I think it's interesting because some organizations need a transformation now more than ever because what happened with their market, what happened with their clients, even internally sometimes, like you don't have people in the office, so you need an internal transformation on your people strategy. I was reflecting on that the other day, and I even wrote an article talking about this idea of capturing hearts and minds. And I think this is now not a time to capture minds; it's a time to capture hearts, because people are tired, but they still need to be engaged on the survival of the business they work in.
Yes. And so the notion of purpose and the why is very critical right now, right?
And it has to be honest. After the biggest event in our lifetime, how can you go back to your people and not be transparent about what's happening?
Yes. The I mentioned that in a different podcast. The Kotter Institute just released a report a couple of weeks ago, actually, 3 learnings out of COVID. And the first one was transparency and communication. They have become the expectations from people right now. And so to your point around, it's going to have to be an honest why. Why do we need to do this right now? And it's not going to go to, there's a lot of debate right now. For example, do we continue working from home, or do we go back to the office, or is it the hybrid? And lots of organizations that are just sitting in there trying to figure out what is the best way to do that. But some organizations, the smart ones, they're already engaging with their people. And because at the end of the day, what COVID has uncovered is that you can work away from the office. You can do all of those things. I mean, depending on the job. So, the fire brigade cannot work from home. And so the honest why is going to have to be really at the forefront of every leader's way of thinking. When we test, from my experience, every time we have a change, especially in technology, we do lots of testing. And there's usually some organizations have got the luxury of having a testing team. Do we test? And so one of my challenges to those teams, and from my experience, is that they never check how people will feel about that change, or how they just check that the process works from a functionality perspective.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating conversation, because at one stage it's like you have processes that are fundamentally technical, yes, and you need to be very deliberate about testing technical aspects of it. But on the other hand, most of the processes that you're changing, and even technologies that you're introducing, they're going to change fundamentally how people work. And I think that's where most of the opportunity lies in process design. It's not about the complexity. It's about listening to people and making sure that they're going to be comfortable in working in that future state, even if the change sometimes is not as big as what you're thinking. Making sure that you're going to get there, that you're going to get some results is the primary thing. I remember one project that I worked in. The key insight for us to find the problem space was how unhappy people were in doing that task, and making sure that we took that task away. It was such a simple thing, but in terms of results was like incredible, because it just brought a whole different side benefits in terms of like, I'm more motivated, my productivity will increase on doing other things. Of course, that removing that task was a big thing.
Yeah.
But you're looking at people that can have a completely different approach to what they do, how they do the work. Yeah. And I think that going back to the design thinking framework, Ali, we talk about those 3, it's a Venn diagram with the 3 circles. You have desirability, feasibility, and viability. So desirability is, do people actually want that new process, that new product? Feasibility means, can I do that in terms of organization and technology? And viability is financial. Sometimes we start with viability and feasibility to then try to stack up if people actually like it. But you have to start with desirability first. And that doesn't change much either if you're creating a new app or if you're redesigning your back of house process, you got to start with people.
Great. Desirability, feasibility, and viability. I remember that, Fabio. From your experience, and you work with a lot of change professionals, how would you rate the current change management capability for practitioners and also for leaders?
Well, I think there's a lot that can still be done. I've met a lot of change professionals that are really at the forefront of change in terms of, learning new methodologies and really trying to understand the complexity of the world that they exist in. But I still see a lot of people that treat change as a transactional activity, as creating a PowerPoint, as creating a table of before and after. I think that with the change professionals that I've seen that have been more successful are the ones that are not interested on the change discipline itself. They embed themselves on what the process is to really understand it. They are not, as I said, transactional. They're really different. And I think in terms of leadership, I haven't seen a big change. I think that I have been very lucky to be part of a massive government transformation in the last 3 years where the leadership was, I have never seen anything like it, like how much they communicated, the transparency and everything they did. But I know that I'm lucky and I'm in a different environment. Not many leaders are like this, but I'm interested in what's going to happen with COVID, post-COVID, that people now see that change can happen like this, and how leaders are going to be reacting to that.
Yeah, and one of the things that obviously COVID-19 uncovered is that all of a sudden leaders don't have all the answers. And some of them always believe that they have all the answers. And that was going to be always the struggle. When we talk about change management, I think your point around the transactional, the way I look at it is that activity is going to have to be a purpose-driven activities and not a task-driven activities. And the second thing, if change management is about people, then you're going to have to think about that with all our activities and decisions that we actually make. And we look at it as a holistic approach rather than we're just going to do bits in here, we're going to run training. In fact, some change managers are not even interested in training because there's a training department. So I completely agree with you in terms of that. We've got a long way to go, but I think I am noticing that there's a lot of change practitioners that are really keen to learn more. And the way I look at it is that we need to learn more about training and new methodologies of training. We need to think more of how we communicate. We need to educate ourselves in communication and then learning new ways to communicate. We need to learn more about influence. You mentioned PowerPoint, and by the way, I'm not against PowerPoints, but we can put the before and after. But that's a whole story. You can't even put it in one slide. And that's the whole. You're gonna go and change somebody's life, and in the office. Does that mean that we need to learn more about design thinking and people-centered design?
100%, and I think that it's people literacy skills that need to come into play. Some of the best change managers that I've met, they come from HR. It's not a surprise that they are connected to people, to speaking that language. But there's also a lot of other tools that come with design thinking that will be beneficial, like prototyping, for example, storytelling. That it's much bigger than just design thinking, but mastering storytelling is one of the key skills that I think change professionals could have.
Yeah, because storytelling specifically helps us a lot around understanding the impact, because that will give us a holistic view about the system and the process and where that particular process sits in the system.
Yeah. And think about that whole idea of starting early as a change professional. You're part of aware of a prototype, part of a pilot. You're capturing so many stories. When you go ahead and you want to roll that out to a much bigger audience, you can tell that story. You can speak from the heart. You can speak from what happened, experiences. You can speak about pain points. You can be transparent. But if you're not there in the beginning, your storytelling would be very artificial. Of course, it would be better than just a table before and after. But if you're part of that process from the beginning, your repertoire for change increases dramatically.
Yes, if you come early in the stage, not only will help you understand, at a deeper level, the why behind it, but also it will help you articulate your key messages. Rather than, it comes to you later. It will help you think early in the stage about how you're going to run training. It will help you early in the stage about where resistance will come from. It will help you early in the stage about how sustainable or your hypercare, whatever you want to call it, period would look like. So these are the benefits that, change managers will get. And it's time, I think, for the change practitioners to talk to their management teams and their sponsors about and educate them about the need of having a seat at the table. And perhaps they will be silent in the early stages because they want to listen to the whole thinking process. But when they talk later to the teams, they will talk out of knowledge. And it's informed knowledge of all the way from the initial stages to the implementation stage.
Yeah, and the reality is that they're going to see problems that are very likely going to repeat in the future. And they, will have the answers, or at least they're going to be closer to an answer than coming in cold at the end.
Yes. Fantastic. And so this is really the one of the questions that I wanted to ask you about is that how do organizations need to think of change management? And I'm hoping the listeners will be more sort of willing to actually talk to their organizations. But I think there's a good awareness now about the role of change managers. Again, the crisis of COVID-19 has actually helped us really articulate our role. But I'm a big advocate of we've got a critical role working on people, on changes that impact people is a very complex process rather than, we go from initiation to implementation to sustainability or hypercare. It's not a linear process by any means.
Yeah, exactly. I think that this idea that you mentioned, it is a complex problem. Every time that people are involved in change, it's not complicated, it's not simple, it's complex. And complex means that it will change. The problem changes as you try to solve it. So if you're not part of that problem, if you're not immersed in that problem, it's almost impossible to manage it from a distance, right? From your desk in head office. It's going to be really hard.
Fantastic. We're coming to the end of the podcast, Fabio. I really appreciate your time. How would people reach you? And I know that you're really keen on helping people with their questions.
Yeah, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Fabio Oliveira. There's a lot of Fabio Oliveiras on LinkedIn, but if you look at Fabio Oliveira, Worksafe, for example, which is where I work now, you're going to find me there. My website is fabio.so, so fabio.so, and you have all the links to my social media stuff and email as well, so you can reach me there.
And we're going to put all your information on the podcast information as well. I really appreciate the time. It's been a pleasure, my friend, and then hope we talk soon. Take care.
Thanks,
Hi everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode with Fabio Oliveira. To know more about this podcast, check the innergameofchange.com.au website. To receive more podcasts, simply subscribe. In our next podcast, we will meet with a learning and development specialist to explore the impact of capability building on change adoption. Until then, stay well and stay safe.